If I'm being honest, I don't know where to look, but I'm gonna look at the screens, just to clarify. Hi, Professor. For my final project, I chose to focus on week 14, the Sound of California, Myth and Migration. Specifically on how music reflects the tension between the California dream and the lived realities beneath it. For my cultural analysis project, I wrote about the Spanish fantasy past, boosterism in California, and kind of tie that into like the OC pilot episode. But for this reflection, I wanted to really focus on something different. So I focused on how music reveals another side of California's identity through different topics and themes that we talked about in the lecture that week, which included themes of illusion, entrapment, and migration. So, second slide. Um, so the Sound of California. I kind of just like reiterate what I just said in this slide. Um, but the cultural moment that I'm essentially reflecting on is the way that California has been imagined and reimagined through music, through um, the mid 20th century. And they argue that music is important because it exposes this sort of gap between California as like a promised land and then California as a place that is shaped by struggle, loss, and disappointment. So, to explore this, I analyzed two different songs from week 14, which were Hotel California by the Eagles. Um, and this one was discussed specifically in the lecture. And I also did La Jaula de Oro by Los Tigres del Norte, which connects directly to the readings. So, personal reflection before all of the slides, I kind of talked about how before class, like taking this class, I had kind of heard both of these songs, especially like Hotel California, but I never thought about this song deeply, if I'm being honest, and what they were saying about California. And I mostly associated California music as like something that just had ideas of like freedom, sunshine, and success. And after listening to these songs through the lens of the lecture and the readings, I realized how much music shapes the way we imagine California, even when that image isn't fully true. And Hotel California stood out to me because it completely flips the idea of California as an escape. And at first, the song feels really dreamy and inviting, but by the end, it becomes unsettling in a way. And I think that shift in it really made me reflect on how often people chase this ideal version of success, or happiness without really realizing the cost that come with it. And I found that um, really relatable as someone growing up in a household that was surrounded by like these narratives about achievement and opportunity here in California. And as for La Jaula de Oro, I think this one affected me in a bit of a different way. I didn't realize before this class how central migrant music is to California's cultural identity, and I think the song made California feel much more complicated and emotional, especially through the perspective of a migrant who has, achieved financial stability but feels trapped and disconnected. And listening to it made me think about how success is really often like measured or almost always measured in material items, while emotional and cultural costs, are always sort of ignored. And together, both of these songs just really changed how I listen to music about California. And they made me realize that the California dream isn't just one shared experience, but something that looks different for it just like looks different depending on really who you are and where you're coming from. So for my next slide, um sorry, I don't know why it keeps going back. So in this slide, I talk about different like tropes and themes that were discussed in the lecture. And we kind of talked about how, or well, you talked about how it explains that California music like often follows a pattern built specifically around these tropes, such as climate, escape, utopia, beauty, um, leisure, and loss of control, which is what I mentioned. And I think Hotel California fits this structure perfectly, because the song begins with like warm sensory imagery that presents California as inviting and comfortable, which really reflects the lecture's idea that climate is sort of, used to sell California as some sort of paradise. And I mentioned three here in this slide. I did utopia fantasy, loss of control, and then climate and escape. And I kind of write a little like sentence for each one. But the narrator in the song arrives like tired and searching for relief, which reflects the escape trope discussed in the lecture. And California has always been framed as this like place of leaving problems behind and starting fresh and starting over. But as the song progresses in this like um sort of like narration that they're saying, it their escape kind of turns into some sort of entrapment. And that leads me to my next slide, which is the standout lyric. So the lyric I chose was one of the most famous ones, which is you can check out at any time. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. So this clearly represents the lecture's idea that California's pleasures can lead to loss of control and imprisonment rather than freedom. And it really shows the darker side of the California dream where desire and excess become these sort of like traps. And then for my significance, I list those in this slide. So let's talk about like trope of illusion versus reality. So like that imprisonment that is seen in it, whereas we compare it to like the beginning of the song when they had just arrived. And then for the reading song, La Jaula de Oro, I also wrote down different tropes and themes here, and also the page numbers as to where I kind of got them from. And for this one, the reading by Josh Kun, California Sueños. I think, yeah, California Sueños. It really helped me understand how La Jaula de Oro fits into a much larger cultural pattern. Because Kun describes California as a place shaped by repeated migrations where dreams of opportunity are often followed by disappointment. And he explains that Mexican migrant music frequently critiques California myths and also reveals what he calls the other California, which is a version of the state built on struggle rather than sunshine. And the song La Jaula de Oro really reflects this idea because by telling like the story of a migrant who has achieved economic success but feels emotionally imprisoned, um, I think like that really helped me connect it to a lot of the content we were learning about. And that leads me to the lyric I chose for this song, which was ¿De qué me sirve dinero si estoy como prisionero dentro de esta gran nación? Um, I think this lyric directly challenges the idea that financial success equals happiness. And it connects to the reading in Kunt's description of Norteño music as a songbook of migrancy, um, where music sort of becomes like an emotional archive of displacement, not disappointment, displacement, and sort of like survival in a way. And when I compare both of these songs, here's my comparison slide. Um, what stood out to me is how both of the songs use the idea of being trapped. And I edited like a little, took two photos and kind of edited that. But I think Hotel California presents entrapment through a luxury and excess way, whereas like La Jaula de Oro presents it through migration and identity loss, um, which is something that's really relatable. Like the more I read it, and even though the experiences in the song, like within the song, are different, they both critique the same myth that California um, just like automatically delivers freedom and fulfillment. And the comparison really helped me see how music across genres and communities, and how it like plays a powerful role in questioning just dominant narratives about the state. So that was what I learned through the comparison of both, and then I kind of just have that written down here. And that was about it. This is my works cited, but as for my conclusion, I would say that overall, this cultural moment really matters because it shows how music challenges the California dream rather than simply promoting it. And through Hotel California and La Jaula de Oro, we see two like different perspectives that both reveal California as a place of contradiction where promise and disappointment exist at the same time. And I think using the lecture and the readings really, really, really helped me understand that music is not just entertainment, but a way that people make sense of their experiences, um, as well as their identities and realities here in California. So I learned a lot through this final sort of reflection. But yeah, um, that wraps up my final reflection project. I hope I was able to get what I was trying to say across properly, but yeah, I just wanted to say that I learned a lot through this project and everything that we've done in the class. So I'm kind of sad that this is like the last one here. And I think as someone who didn't really plan on taking a class like this, I learned a lot more than anticipated. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah, I'm glad that I wasn't interrupted this time, so there will be no yell at the end. But that wraps up my project. So thank you for listening and have a great day.